I love that you're inspired by sort of sci-fi mood and also video game music, which I think is really cool because I didn't ever think of video game music as being sort of a genre or an inspiration. Of course, I grew up at a time when video game music was just
What game is that? Is that
it was a
Pac-Man?
very early game. Yeah. Like Ms. Pac-Man was like, oh. I was getting a lot of disappointing noises because I wasn't good. Nice try, loser.
That was your inner monologue.
That wasn't even. Come to think of it, I wasn't playing a game. That was just.
His inner monologue is just Miss Pac-Man.
Yeah.
Melting.
Yeah. That's why I've never been able to be intimate with anyone. Oh, I really like you. Let's get down. You're a loser. What? Miss Pac-Man, get out of my head. I'm trying to get it on. This is such a stupid interview. I apologize. You're such a talented person. I'm sorry.
You deserve better.
You do deserve a real interviewer. But recently, my son, who's 17, started listening to all this music, and I said, "Where does this come from?" And he said, "It's gaming music." But I was listening to it, and it's really good.
Yeah.
When did you start to notice? Was this something that was always happening, where you're noticing different sounds that you liked?
I guess so. I mean, I was such an indoor kid that I just really enjoyed playing video games and was gifted like a Super Nintendo when I was 5, and I always really enjoyed it. And I think it's really, I'm going to do a really bad job of expressing this, but I think it's a really interesting art form to interact with because there are games that like sort of force you to make these kind of like moral decisions, and it's like the only time that you're like actively a part of like the medium in that way that makes you kind of like question your morality. So for instance, there's this game called Stardew Valley. Have you heard of it? It's like a farming game. And I think it's really interesting that like you can play games that like have you like kill someone, which you would never do in real life. But there's a thing called Joja Mart where it's like the corporation, and you can choose whether or not you want to like go to the local seed. So I can
This is good. I like this.
You go to the local seed shop or like go to a cheaper corporation, and somehow like I've never gone to the corporation like in the game, and because that's like crossing a moral line within the game. But you can like in other games you like stab someone and it's fine. But I think it's really interesting to like interact with games this way.
But it's interesting that I find it fascinating that games are getting so sophisticated that you're making moral choices.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting is like first-person shooter games, you're basically killing people left and right, but somehow we've been inculcated that there's this, it's not real.
Yeah.
You know, it's not real, and
But there's certain things that are like more triggering than others. Like I think it was my husband was playing like Red Dead Redemption or something, or like some game where like you had
if you know the game, chime in, Blake.
maybe it's like it's not Skyrim, but it's like a similar game to that. And like he had to like kill a couple of like dogs that were like attacking him or whatever. And for some reason, like all of the people that he had to like fight was okay, but like when you hit the dog and it makes a sound, it's like there's something like really horrifying
I
about
completely
that, you know?
understand.
Yeah.
I was watching a movie last week, and humans are getting off left and right, and then someone like kicked a small bear.
Yeah.
And the bear went like, ooh, and I couldn't, I left the room. I couldn't handle it.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I think there's a Bartleby short story called like The Gerbil, and it's all of these like terrible things happen in the class. Like, you know, first it's like the gerbil dies, and then it's like a kid like falls off of, you know, a plaything or whatever, and then they get a puppy, and when the puppy dies, that's the moment like that really that's like the height of tragedy, not like this like a child that fell in the story.
Yeah, but a lot of
like,
kids suck, you know? I mean, they do. They're just such assholes. I want my chocolate milk. You know? I usually applaud when a child falls. This is our last podcast. This is a successful podcast. And you're a very lovely, talented person. You've done nothing wrong, but somehow you've brought it out of us.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's your
guys.
fault.
Yeah.
It feels to me like when I listen to your music, one of the things, and I think I even heard you say this, that you like this kind of heroes versus villains dichotomy between good, evil, but how the line is blurred. And I always find that fascinating because I love movies. Occasionally I'll love a movie where there's, you know, you watch Die Hard and you know who the good guy is and the bad guy is Hans Gruber, and there's no mistaking that. But I'm more drawn to the movies that I think have more of a European bent, where I know it's interesting. There are people who seem like the bad guy and people who seem like the good guy, but the lines get blurred and you feel like everybody's just trying to do their own thing, and havoc ensues.
I mean, I think that's like the purpose of art, really, is to just like find humanity in people. You know, I mean, I think my favorite shows are shows like The Sopranos, or like where you're rooting. You feel conflicted because you're rooting for a murderer, and I think it puts everything into perspective. You know, I'm like
You must have watched Sopranos on the second go around, right? Because you seem young to have watched The Sopranos.
I remember when it was coming out, and like my parents would like, I wonder how old I was. I feel like I was definitely too young to watch The Sopranos, but my parents like loved the show so much, and I remember like getting sent out of the room every time like Bada Bing scene came out.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I've rewatched it many times since, and I feel like that's that element of that show, and I feel the same way about Game of Thrones too, where you're just like, I love like being manipulated to like hate someone, and then in the next scene like kind of like really fall for them, and I think that's what great art should do.
It's funny you say that because I just rewatched all The Sopranos. I made it a mission and I watched all of them in like a month. There's a terrific book about The Sopranos by two writers, I think, from the Star Ledger, I want to say, and it's just a great essay about each episode. So I would watch the episode, then read this essay, and I just got so much meaning out of rewatching it. And I'm just starting to, my son's never seen Game of Thrones, so we're just starting to watch it. Although that's difficult because there's full-on crazy nude sex sometimes. And when you're a dad sitting in the room with your son, both of us want to die.
Yeah.
Both of us just want to make our hearts stop through sheer force of will and die. Because it's not, you can't even pretend it's not happening.
And you're not like, oh, this is cool sex. I'm cool about sex stuff.
Oh, no.
You can just do what my parents did and like send him out of the room.
You know in The Sixth Sense, you knew a ghost was in the room because they could see their breath? When I'm watching television and anyone else is in the room and sex is graphically depicted, suddenly I can see my breath. Suddenly it's like this vapor coming out of my mouth. And it always happens just beforehand. I know it's coming, and then sure enough, thwang, da-ba-da-da-ba-da-da-ba-da, you know.
That is the worst sound for any sexual scene I've ever heard of.
You don't think that's an accurate thwang, da-ba-da-da-ba-da-da-ba-da? We have a professional musicologist, artist here who will vouch that is the exact way it sounds. You're going to rip me off, too. I know in your next album, you're going to have a huge hit with thwang, thubba-da-dubba-da-dubba-da. And the Grammy for Best Single. Japanese Breakfast with thwang, thubba-da-dubba-da-dubba-da. And I'll be like, I know I'm going to get mentioned. Nope. You mention all your friends, all your cool pals, and not one word for me.